The sun beat down on the dusty plains as the whistle of the afternoon train echoed through the small town of Red Creek. The wooden platform creaked under the boots of the cowboy who stood waiting, his hat tilted low, his coat slung over one arm, and his expression hard as stone. Caleb Rawlins was not a man given too much patience, but he had waited months for this day. After years of loneliness, endless nights at the ranch with nothing but cattle for company, he had written to a mail-order bride agency back east. He had asked for a woman plain, steady, and strong, someone who could work the land, cook simple meals, and share his silence without complaint. He didn't want beauty, he didn't want fire, and he sure didn't want trouble. But when the train hissed to a halt and steam curled over the wooden slats, the figure who stepped down from the iron steps was nothing like what he had ordered. She wore a worn but graceful blue dress, her dark hair tied back but unruly in the prairie wind, and her eyes sharp, bold, unafraid, locked onto his with a fierceness that stopped him cold. Beside her clutched a small boy, maybe 5 years old, with a face too young to hide the fear of new beginnings. Caleb's jaw tightened, his rough hand adjusting the brim of his hat as he muttered under his breath, words that he hadn't meant to say aloud. "You're not what I ordered." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line, but instead of lowering her gaze, as most women in town would have, she met him head-on. "No," she replied, her voice steady despite the rattle of the train departing behind her. "But I'm what you've got, and if that's not enough, I'll take my boy and be on my way. I don't beg, mister." Caleb blinked, taken aback. She wasn't supposed to sound like that. She wasn't supposed to look like that. And yet, there she was, her small hand gripping the boy's with a strength that spoke of miles traveled, losses endured, and battles yet to come. The silence stretched as curious. Townsfolk paused in their errands to watch the exchange, whispers already spreading like wildfire. The cowboy knew one thing about gossip: it burned fast, and once it lit, there was no putting it out. He could turn her away. He could walk off the platform, pretend this mistake never happened. But when he looked at her again, saw the stubborn set of her jaw, the protective way she stood in front of her child, something in him shifted. He realized that maybe what he had ordered wasn't what he needed. What he needed was standing right in front of him. With a rough sigh, Caleb stepped closer, his shadow falling over her and the boy. "You're not what I ordered," he repeated, but this time softer, almost like an admission of fate. "But maybe you're what I was supposed to get." The boy's eyes darted up at him, uncertain but curious, and Caleb did something he hadn't done in years. He reached out his calloused hand. Eliza hesitated, staring at that hand as though it was a bridge she wasn't sure she could cross. But when her son tugged gently at her dress, she placed her palm against his. His grip was strong, steady, the grip of a man who knew how to hold on and never let go. And in that moment, Caleb Rawlins, the cowboy who had spent his life riding alone, decided in front of the whole town that this woman and her boy would be his, not because she was what he ordered, but because life had a way of delivering exactly what a man needed at the right time. The preacher, who had been lingering nearby as if fate had arranged it, stepped forward when Caleb gave a short nod. Whispers turned into gasps as the cowboy's gravelly voice declared, "Then let's not waste time. Marry me now, before this town thinks I'm a fool." And so, under the golden light of the setting sun, with the train's smoke drifting away, and the mountains standing eternal in the distance, Caleb and Eliza were bound together not by letters, not by orders, but by choice. The boy clung to Caleb's leg, already finding a place where he belonged, and the cowboy realized that sometimes what you don't order is exactly what your heart has been waiting for all along. Life on the Rawlins ranch was never easy, and Eliza learned that from the very first dawn she woke as Caleb's wife. The rooster crowed, the sky stretched wide and pale, and already the chores demanded hands that would not stop until sundown. Caleb rose early, moving with the silent efficiency of a man shaped by years of hard living, while Eliza boiled water over the stove and tried to make sense of a kitchen that smelled of dust and neglect. The boy, Daniel, clung to her skirts at first, wary of the stranger now called Pa, but his eyes followed Caleb everywhere, full of questions he didn't yet know how to ask. The townsfolk had their whispers how Caleb Rawlins had married a woman he claimed he never ordered, how she came with baggage in the form of a child, how this arrangement would never last. But the gossip only made Eliza stand taller, her voice firmer when she greeted neighbors, her hands steadier when she worked. She wasn't here to prove herself to anyone. She was here because this was the only chance she had to build a future for her boy. Caleb, for all his gruffness, was a man of his word, and he had married her in front of the whole town. She meant to honor that, even if she never truly touched his heart. But the heart is a stubborn thing, and Caleb's began to change without his permission. At first, he saw her strength only in passing, in the way she lifted water buckets without complaint, in how she coaxed laughter out of Daniel when the boy seemed afraid of the endless plains. He noticed her fire when she argued with him over the size of the chicken coop, or how the table ought to be set for supper. He caught himself staring when her hair fell loose while she baked bread, strands catching sunlight like threads of gold. For a man who believed he'd ordered simplicity and obedience, this woman's spirit both unsettled and fascinated him. He told himself it didn't matter. She wasn't what he ordered. She wasn't what he wanted. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the prairie wind howled against the windows, he found himself listening for the sound of her breath just down the hall, comforted by the knowledge that he wasn't alone anymore. The turning point came one stormy night, when the sky split open with lightning and thunder roared across the valley. A flash flood threatened the cattle, and Caleb was out the door before Eliza could stop him. Rain pounded the earth, turning it into rivers of mud, and Daniel cried out for him, clutching at his mother's dress. Without hesitation, Eliza threw on her shawl, lifted her boy to her hip, and plunged into the storm after Caleb. She found him knee-deep in water, shouting orders to drive the herd to higher ground, his face cut with desperation. When he saw her, soaked through, hair plastered to her cheeks, Daniel clinging to her side, he nearly shouted in anger, "You shouldn't be here." But the words stuck in his throat when he realized she was doing exactly what he was doing, protecting what was theirs. Together, side by side, they fought the storm until the herd was safe. And when Caleb finally pulled her against him beneath the blackened sky, there was no denying the truth anymore. She wasn't what he ordered. She was what he needed. After that night, something shifted between them. Caleb no longer spoke of her as an obligation, and Eliza no longer feared being cast aside. Daniel began calling Caleb Pa without hesitation, his small voice ringing with trust, and Caleb felt a pride he'd never known before. Around the supper table, laughter replaced silence, and in the evenings, Caleb would sometimes take out his guitar, strumming quiet songs while Eliza hummed along, her eyes softer than he had ever seen them. Love had crept in slowly, disguised as duty, hidden under the weight of survival. But by the time spring rolled across the prairie, it was undeniable. One evening, as the sun bled red over the horizon and the air smelled of wild sage, Caleb took Eliza's hand outside the ranch house. His voice, still rough, carried a tenderness she hadn't heard before. "You're not what I ordered," he said again, repeating those first foolish words. "But I thank God every day he sent you anyway. You gave me a family. You gave me more than I knew I wanted." Eliza's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide, and she squeezed his hand, whispering back, "And you gave me a home. That's all I ever needed." Daniel came running from the yard, chasing a wooden toy horse Caleb had carved for him, and the three of them stood there together, the cowboy, the woman, and the boy, not bound by orders or contracts, but by something far greater, love forged in hardship, trust earned in storms, and a future that finally belonged to them. And so the story ended not with the woman Caleb thought he had ordered, but with the woman fate had chosen for him. In the wild land of Red Creek, where life was rough and promises were rare, the cowboy had found a partner, a son, and a reason to hope. Sometimes what you don't order is exactly what your soul has been waiting for all along.